Welcome, everyone. Today we have Joel Brodsky, who scored a 156 on Florida Part A for the February 2023 exam. And we brought him on here today, one, to congratulate him on such an amazing score, and also to get some insight for future takers of the Florida Bar exam, what they can do to try and get a score that high. So any thoughts that you have, Joel?
The first part I would say is don't freak out. Don't kill yourself mentally. It is a very hard test. No matter what anybody tells you, no matter what friends you've seen that have passed or failed, it's hard, and you just got to kind of take it at your own pace. You kind of also have to find out what works for you, in a sense, and I think that's the beauty of some of the things that I was able to do here with Ibis Prep, is that it's not your traditional, here we're just going to overload you with a ton of information and you got to read it all. Not to say you don't have to read everything that's given to you, but there's many ways to crack this nut, is what I would say.
Sure. And so we can break Florida down into essays and multiple choice. How did your approach change from the first time you took the test when you were just shy of passing to the second time you took the test when you had really high essay scores? Was there a change in approach, and can you elaborate upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things that I noticed that I was doing that was different from the first time to the second time was when I was writing my practice essays the first time around, I would hit that 1 hour mark and I'd be like, okay, I'm not done yet, so let me just keep writing a little bit more and get to 1 hour, 10 minutes. And sure, that might happen on test day, and one essay, you see the subject is something you can knock out in 50 minutes, and so you, in your head, you plan for an extra 10 minutes on another essay. But really, you should focus in on every essay should take you an hour at the absolute most. And if you get some extra time here and there, sure, use that to your advantage, but really focus on practicing the 1 hour marks. I started off at least doing just one essay at a time, not working the 3 hours that are going to be on test day. And as you get more comfortable writing on certain subjects, and as you get more comfortable just writing out the full essays, then you can start putting 2 essays together or 3 essays together. But personally, I didn't start doing that until the last month or so, because I wanted to really lock down the 1 hour.
Sure. And for you, because, I was working with you and you were doing the commercial course when you first graduated, and you were successful in passing the MBE. And then the second time you committed to working with us exclusively. And I noticed that the key thing for you was timing, right? The first time you took it, you kind of ran out of time. The second time you took it, you were prepared and you didn't have any timing issues. There's 2 things I want to talk about in that regard for you. One is, how many practice essays did you actually write? And the other is, did you apply for accommodations, and how did that process go? And what are your thoughts on that?
So, okay, so from the first time to the second time, I wrote double the practice essays. I was content. I was content with where I was on the first time around, not really knowing that I was not doing good enough, because I was like, okay, an hour 10, I wrote a nice essay and I felt good about myself. And I was like, okay, well, that was 2 or 3 practice essays that week. I'm good this week, And the second time around, to quote Andrew, I left no stones unturned, and I wrote as many essays as I could. I also took advice from a former student of Ibis, Ben, who really preached the same thing. He's like, just knock out as many as you can. And so I kind of started playing a game with myself, where I would go to the bar website and see each year and click a year, print out all 6 of those essays, flip them upside down, and just pull one out randomly, so that I didn't know the subject that I was going to be writing in that moment. Which is I was trying to mimic test day rules and formalities as much as I could, because I felt like that would give me the best practice and familiarity with what I'm going to actually be doing on the exam. So I wrote a ton of essays for sure. And as far as accommodations, I definitely did try to apply with accommodations. I reached out to a doctor that I've been seeing, that I was seeing. I reached out to the bar. It ended up being, for one reason or another, something that was too complicated. It was also partially on my fault that I waited kind of to the last minute to do so, because initially I told myself, no, I was just a few minutes short the first time. I don't need the accommodations. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, look, if I can qualify for one, I may as well take it. It's not gonna, it's not noted on my test or anything of that nature that I had an accommodation or that I had extra time, and no one needs to know about it. So I was of the mindset that if I qualify for one, it's only going to help me. So I ultimately did not get a test accommodation, and it did not hurt me to not have one, because the practice that I put in, I was able to get my essays down to an hour, and I was really able to kind of break down my writing throughout the process of studying. I was able to see what was it that I was doing that was taking me too long, and that why was I running out of time? And the more I started to focus on that, I saw improvement. I saw more and more improvement. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but I saw myself getting better. And I think you kept telling me that you were noticing that I was getting better as well.
Yeah, there's a couple things I would point out. So Joel had perfect attendance to the crash course, so he was very diligent in just staying on top of the material. We have accountability folders on the drive, and he was always turning in his essays. I would grade them, and there were things that were missing, but it's a process of improvement. We did one-on-one tutoring together where we really went through some essays together, and one thing I really admired and appreciated about Joel was his desire to master the essays, not just get 80% of the issues, but to get all the issues. So there is that process of repetition and going through all the practice essays. And I think Joel was a model student in just coming to all the classes, doing all the assignments, and over preparing himself. The other thing is he recognized a weakness within himself, which was timing, tried to get accommodations for reasonable reasons. He had, received them potentially in the past, but he wasn't able to get them here, but still was able to write his essays within 1 hour and do an amazing job. And so that's really remarkable. What's even more remarkable is how he performed on multiple choice. And I'm totally here to listen. I want to know, what was your approach to the Florida multiple choice section, and how'd you do so well?
Okay, so as far as the multiple choice, the biggest thing for me, at least that I noticed, and of course, like I said before, you have to find what works for you. And initially I would start, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do 100 multiple choice at a time, try to mimic test day formalities. And, when it's still, this was the February exam, when it was still mid-December, by the time I'd get to 50 questions, I'm kind of zoned out, and I'm not, my focus is gone, and I'm just kind of going through the motions, like read a question, just pick an answer and keep it moving so that I can fit in the time constraints and try to, see where I would be at on test day. And I noticed that wasn't necessarily my best approach. So what I was doing was I was breaking down each subject. So initially, the way the course was designed is we started off with Florida civil procedure, Florida criminal procedure, and evidence. And so I would break down, and I would do 20 questions at a time of only that subject. So I would do 20 Civ Pro questions at a time. I would do them, I would do the math and put 1 minute and 8 seconds per question. So, okay, 20 questions, that's like 45 minutes or so. And I would still try to do it on those timing. And I noticed that when I was doing it that way, I was finishing these multiple choice questions with 15 minutes left. Granted, there were only 20 questions and not 100, but that kind of gave me some confidence of, little by little, I was noticing, you know what, my timing's not so bad, at least not on the multiple choice. My timing's not so bad. So I don't have to worry necessarily about rushing the exams. And that's something that on test day, it hits you when it's probably too late that, oh no, my timing is not good. I got to rush through this, or And then you start to panic and freak out, and that tends to hurt your score, obviously. So I would break down these questions 20 at a time. And after I'd finish those 20, I'd see, okay, 15 minutes, whatever, 11 minutes left. I'd give myself, 5 minutes, walk around my apartment, take a breather, kind of just like think about something else, but not too long because got a lot of questions to get through. 5 minutes. And then I'd come back and really one by one, read the question again, then read the answer, read the explanations, and really try to make sure I'm understanding that particular question before I move on to the next one. And if I didn't understand it, or if it was something that I learned for that question, I then pull up my outline and like read that, whatever that topic was, whatever that specific question was about. And I'd make sure, okay, I got this. I understand this topic or this question. Let me move on. And doing that definitely takes a lot longer. You end up doing less questions a day. But as you said, for me, I felt like, okay, I'm moving on because I've mastered this. And that's something that worked to my benefit, but a lot of times it worked to my detriment because I was hyper focused on mastery of everything that I saw, whether it was multiple choice or an essay. I really wanted to make sure I know this, no matter how you phrase it. And that's what I noticed helped me. So I do my 20 Civ Pro, and then, okay, I'd mark down, I would always kind of keep a little list of the 20 that I did. And I got, 14 out of 20. We didn't start at 14 out of 20. We started at 10 out of 20. We started at 11 out of 20. But I'd keep marking that down and see my score improve. Okay, these 20 of Civ Pro, I did better. These 20 of evidence, I'm doing great. Or these 20 of criminal procedure, not so great. Let me pick that back up. And I'd do 20, 20, 20. Then I'd go back the next 20 for Civ Pro, and so on and so forth. And by the end of the week, I'd get through, let's say, anywhere from 60 to 80 questions of those 3 topics. And at that point, I was like, all right, I've given 80 questions for each of these topics, and I feel pretty good about them. I obviously haven't gone through all the questions that were supplied, but I got a good feel for that, of those 80 that I did for each one, before introducing then BA and wills and anything else. I know now on the new exams, there's going to be more subjects for multiple choice, but I really kind of broke it down little by little, as opposed to do 50 questions at a time, do 100 questions at a time. You get fatigued, and we all do. Anyone who says they're not is probably not telling you the truth, I would say, because it's a lot.
Sure.
50 questions are thorough.
There's a few things that we're totally in alignment about. Number one is mastery. A lot of the other commercial bar prep programs will tell you that you just need to have a general understanding, but we really know that they do test the finer details, especially on Florida multiple choice. So you do have to strive for some level of mastery. Another thing that we have in common is simulation of the exam and under time circumstances. I really like, for essays and multiple choice, you kept talking about how you would do them, and you would do them timed, and you would get quicker, because it's not just about accuracy, it's also about speed. So I really like all the things that you did, which were a lot of simulation of the test taking experience, going over practice questions, and meditating on the law. When you did a question and you got it wrong, you wouldn't just move forward. You would want to say, why did I get this wrong? And truly understand that. One question I have is, did you run into an issue of seeing the same questions over and kind of memorizing the answers? And was there a way you compensated for that, or did you keep finding new questions?
I definitely did find myself kind of recognizing some questions, even out as I was reading them. But the way that I am is, even though I know that I've seen this question, and I know before even answering, it's going to be B, personal matter or personal jurisdiction, whatever, I know the answer, I know the question. I start playing games with myself of no, that's what I picked last time, and that was wrong. It's actually C, and then I throw myself off. So I really try to wipe my brain every time I was seeing these questions, and it's as if I was seeing them for the first time, and it was a clean slate. And I was like, all right, trying to just like ignore that voice in your head saying, no, it's B. You know this already. It's B. No. Just approach each question as you see it. And even if you've seen it 10 times, still do the same. That said, there are questions that will show up on the exam that you've seen before. And some things might be a little different. The order of the answer might be changed a little bit, but you recognize the format of the question, how they're asking it to you, and what they're asking you about. And
Slam dunks.
yeah, exactly. Slam
Yeah.
dunk. You see
We
those.
I was going to say, we want as many slam dunks on the test as we can. And the best way to do that is repetition. And even if you're seeing the questions over and over, it's okay, because it's likely you might see that similar type of question on test day. One other question I have for you is, so you took it 2 times, first time both sections, and you passed MBE and had a few points to go on Florida. And then the second time you just studied for Florida and did amazing. What did you feel was the difference between studying for 2 exams or just studying for 1 exam?
For me, it was a whole different ball game. Of course, nobody wants to fail either part the first time you're taking the exam. In a dream scenario, you pass both with flying colors, never have to look back again. Wasn't the case for me. It isn't the case for a lot of people. If you have that opportunity where you're like, I passed 1 and I have to think, do I want to focus in on only 1 exam, or do I want to take both and test my luck that way? I would really, really, really strongly recommend, if you can, just take the one part you failed. A wise person told me that you never want to take a test that you've passed again. You don't need, it's not that you never want to take it again, but you've already gotten past this. There's no need to do it again. You might fail it the next time. They're hard exams.
Exactly. Especially the MBE.
Exactly. Especially the MBE. In my case, particularly, it's not like I crushed the MBE with a 156 and I was like, oh, well, that's a cakewalk. No, it's not. They're hard exams. It's a very hard exam. So to focus on one exam is tremendously beneficial, I think. At least you don't, especially for this exam on multiple choice parts, or even on the subjects that are on MBE, you have to be able to kind of keep those 2 dates and numbers separate and rules separate. And that's adding more pressure, adding more work for yourself when it's not necessary at that point, because you got the golden ticket on 1. You don't need to go through that again. So I really found it a huge benefit for me that I only had to focus on 1 exam, and only had to focus on, towards the end of studying, we have these sheets that are the numbers for Florida and the numbers for MBE. To only have to look at one of those columns was a lot nicer.
So there's one final question I'm going to ask, but this is something I love because at Ibis Prep, we're a community. I'm going to bring in the next former student that I was going to interview, and she could actually listen to how you answer this question, and maybe it will help her think about how she's going to answer the question. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Meg. You remember?
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you? Good to see you guys.
Good. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot by jumping into this, but I was just finishing up with Joel's interview, and I was going to ask him the final question. And I said, one great thing about Ibis Prep is we're a community, and you guys can congratulate each other. You both passed your exams.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Congrats to you too.
Thank you.
That's what I live for. And the other thing is, I'm going to ask Joel the $1 million question, and I'll be asking you the same question at the end. So maybe you could, we can think about it. So Joel, what advice do you have for people taking the Florida bar exam?
The biggest piece of advice is, I'd say there's many parts to it, but the first thing is you got to find really what strategy works for you. And you need to take it at your own pace. At the same time, you need to keep in mind that this test isn't waiting for you. This test is hard. And so you need to put in that work. You really need to focus, cut out all outside distractions. I hunkered down in my room here. I didn't leave. I didn't party. I didn't do anything. I had very little to no social life during that time, but it's all necessary. It's a short-term sacrifice for long-term success. And I would also suggest that you try to kind of keep the confidence as much as you can. It's a trying time, and you need to, whenever you start getting those negative thoughts, you start doubting yourself, your abilities, you need to look back at how far you've already come, and keep in mind that you individually are of a select group of people that are very intelligent, very hardworking, and use that to kind of keep propelling you forward. Although I would say there's no social life, try to do some sort of physical activity or something to take you outside of this mind space for a little bit, not too many hours a week, but something, because if not, you will start to go crazy in yourself. And don't focus on what, even in your own class or in your friends that graduated law school with you, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Everyone else's story is different. Everyone else's approach and intelligence and this and that. You're your own person. You know what works for you. You know what doesn't. Don't get discouraged or encouraged by what you're seeing from other people. Kind of just take this as your own. This is your test. It doesn't matter what your friend who only has to study 2 days a week, or 2 days out of 2 hours out of every day. Don't worry about that. It's not necessarily going to work for you. It might, but it might not. And this is not the time to leave things to chance. So
Cool, man. You got to do some motivational speaking in your life. I think your story is great. It has a little bit of a revenge story to it, because you were just short of passing Florida on your first attempt, and you came back with a little bit of chip on your shoulder. And not only did you pass, now for the rest of your life, you could tell people you scored 156 on Florida Part A. One thing that I want to know is, when you walked out of the test center on, I guess that Tuesday, was your hand on fire? Did you know that you had just dropped such a great score, or did you think that it was up in the air, pass, fail? Who knows? How did it feel?
So, as modestly as I could put it, I felt pretty good about it. That said, I know, because I already did this, it's a hard exam. It is, you could feel like you crushed it, and a lot of times you didn't. My first time around, I knew that I messed up with time and I ran short of time. So I knew passing, at least on the Florida part, would be a little bit of a miracle, because of the fact that I didn't finish the exam. And so if you didn't finish the exam, that means that whatever you did put down has to be near perfect. And that's a tough ask to begin with. I felt pretty good about it. But at the same time, I'm a little superstitious. I don't want to jinx anything. I was like, look, I felt good about what I wrote. I felt good about the questions that were asked of me. But anything can happen.
Did you sleep the night before the results came out?
Did I sleep the night before? Not as many hours as I normally do, that's for sure. And I was, after the exam, I was, the first couple of days I told myself I'm not going to think about this. And then a week goes by and you start thinking about all the things that you knew were there that you didn't do. And that starts to eat at you a little bit. I'd be showering and thinking like, oh my God, I didn't write this, and it was right there.
Yeah.
Studying superior. And I was like, that was one of the first things I would write on every exam. Why didn't I just put it down just cause? I didn't, but thankfully that essay particularly was my highest essay. So you can still, one thing is, you can still do amazing without putting everything that needs to be there. You don't need to hit 100% of the points. Obviously you want to strive for that, but I was confident in what I put down. There wasn't too many things that I saw or questions that I saw that I was like, oh man, I really don't know. I'm just shooting into the dark here. But at the same time, I didn't want to be overly confident. I've always had the approach that the person that walks out of the exam like, oh, I crushed that, I did amazing. A lot of times they're going to get some bad news. Not every time. Sometimes you crushed it. This time, looking back now, yeah, I knew I did pretty well. I didn't know I was going to get a 156. I'm still surprised. But I knew I did pretty well, and that if I didn't pass this time, it would have been for some small little thing here or there. And sometimes that's all it is. It's a small thing here or there. But I felt satisfied with the work I put in, with you, with our one-on-one tutoring, and with the course. And part of it was like you said, I focused on mastery a lot. So I was like, okay, the things that I did write about, the things that were there that I knew were there, I knew I hit those points, and I got all the points that would be available for that particular heading or whatever it may be. So I felt good in that. But I wasn't walking around telling people I passed. I said, we'll see. I feel good about it, but we'll see. Who knows?
Awesome, man. And I know it feels great. As a typical Ibis Prep moment, my dog is trying to bark in the background. But man, congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Really proud, happy for you. And we were talking before the interview started about what's next. And it seems like there's a lot of really great options. So we're excited to hear what happens. And thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop this interview.
Thank you. Thank you.